it's FPL Pickle and welcome back to another video. So today we have my Game Week 7 Pickles preview, and it's been a while since I've done one of these videos in its entirety, so if you're new around here, what I tend to do in this video is discuss the highlights of the previous game week, discuss some players that I perhaps punt on or even avoid in the upcoming game week. I come up with some fun predictions and I also help to solve some of your dilemmas as well. So if you enjoyed today's video, please give the video a like and also consider subscribing as well. I'd really appreciate the support. We're getting quite close to 7,000 subs now and I'd like to hit that soon. So yeah, please consider subscribing if you enjoyed the video. But before we dive into the Game Week 6 highlights, I just wanted to discuss with you how I did in Game Week 6. So this week I decided to activate my triple captain chip and it turned out pretty well, as you can see. I ended up with 74 points in Game Week 6 and that gave me a nice healthy green arrow from 4.3 million to 2.3 million. So we are making progress. I'm feeling a lot better about it. We're still quite away from where I want to be, but we are still quite early on in the season. So I'm trying not to panic too much, although I have been panicking a little bit and we'll talk a little bit more about that later this week. But yeah, we're going to try and stay a little bit calmer from now. But yeah, I activated my triple captain on Haaland and obviously for the vast majority of the game, he had the assist, but he was sat there with a 5-pointer and I was thinking, oh, it's just going to be the same as last year, because last year I activated my triple captain on him. I think it was Game Week 9 and he ended up on a 6-pointer, so pretty underwhelming. And, you know, up until right at the end, it felt like it was going to be the same thing, but then getting a brace last minute was astounding. So, you know, that was a very nice start to the game week. 48 points, very successful. My first ever successful triple captain chip, by the way. Like, they never go well for me, so yeah, very excited about that. Other than that though, the team itself, pretty mixed bag. Overall pretty naff really. Watkins getting an 8-pointer was fantastic. I mean, I've obviously held him for this long and I know I've had people slating me about that, but he got a goal in the end and it feels good to say that, and I had him. So especially when the likes of Gyökeres and even João Pedro, who I do have, they didn't really get anything. So to have a forward that did return other than Haaland, you know, that felt good. And then defensively, that's where the team really lacked. And when we think about the wildcarders, because a lot of people have wildcarded, well, they did wildcard in Game Week 6. And obviously when I had the triple captain result, I felt like perhaps, even though I've lost all this team value, I've kind of, you know, hedged my bets a little bit and I've kind of got ahead of them. And overall points-wise, I probably still have done better than wildcarders may have done initially. But with Senesi getting an attack and return, and Defcon as well for the 6th week in a row, and then of course Gabriel last minute getting a header goal after conceding, that was a kick in the gut. I'm not gonna lie, that really hurt and I was quite salty about it. I'll be honest with you, I was salty, especially when I have these 1-pointers all over my defence. So yeah, that made it feel a little bit less worth it just because of the team value I've lost. But like, all is not lost at the moment. Spoiler alert, I'm not going to wildcard yet. I'm going to wait until Game Week 8. Going to stay patient. Going to try and stay calmish. But yeah. So, overall, it went well this game week. But that was very much thanks to Haaland. The rest of my team, obviously Semenyo got an attack and return as well, which was great. But then, you know, the likes of Fernandes missing his pen, it was just an absolute disaster. And then the rest of my team not really doing much for me. It was very much a mixed bag, but I'm happy. The Rodgers assist, a little bit salty about that on my bench, but was it really an assist? Controversial. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit, but yeah, that's the team. I'll talk about my plans in my next video, which will be my team selection video. That'll be out Thursday. So what we'll do now is go over how my Pickles predictions did in Game Week 6. So unfortunately, after my great result last week where I got 2 out of 3 of my predictions correct, the Game Week 6 got none of them right, unfortunately. So we're still on a tally of 4 out of 10. And if you don't know, I'm trying to get to 10 predictions correct across the season. If I do that, then I'll be donating £100 to a charity of your choice. So if you have any charities in mind, then please let me know down below in the comments. But yeah, unfortunately, Everton didn't get a penalty. There were a couple where they were calling for one. There was one time where they were trying to call for a penalty and NDI looked very passionate about it. So I think he will be the one taking pens. And then there was a close one right after he came off, and I was thinking, no way they're going to get a pen after he's come off. But yeah, no penalty happened, so that one was wrong. The second one, I mean, I'm glad it didn't happen because I have Semenyo, but he in fact did not blank. He scored, so that was wrong as well. And then the third one, to be fair, I was close. I think he had 5 saves in the end, and I predicted 6+. So it was just one of those. I thought he'd get a lot of saves, and he did get quite a few, just not quite as many as I predicted. So overall, they were wrong. I'm going to say they were wrong, but there was one that wasn't too far off, so I'll take it. Later on in the video, I'll discuss my predictions for Game Week 7, so stay tuned for that. But for now, let's discuss the highlights for Game Week 6. So moving on to the highlights for Game Week 6, and it was quite a juicy weekend, to be fair, and it's really nice to be able to watch the football without having to worry about revision as well. It's the first weekend where I've just been able to watch the football and relax, so that was good. But anyway, I digress. So starting off with Brentford versus Man United, 3-1. Am I surprised? A little bit, but also no. I mean, Thiago getting a brace, I was quite surprised by. That was, if anyone still had him, fair play. He was never a player I was really considering to own, really. And then, of course, Man United did get a pen, but Bruno missed it. And because of them taking forever to decide it, there were quite a few minutes that he had to wait to take it. And studies do show the longer you have to wait, the more likely you are to miss. So unfortunately, it was a pretty bad penalty. He missed the pen, and Fernandes got booked as well, so it ended up on a -1. It was not a great start to the game week for most of us in FPL. Obviously, Kelleher saved the pen, so if anyone had him, nice 8-pointer there. In terms of Man United itself, Sesko finally got a goal. He hasn't looked overly impressive, to be honest, but it's nice for him to finally get a goal for Man United. And yeah, just overall, the performance from Man United wasn't great. Although, there was one decision that really did go against Man United in this game. Like I kind of mentioned, Collins ended up just getting a yellow, but in my opinion, he should have been sent off. I don't know how he got away with that, and I think they have admitted now that that was wrong. So yeah, unfortunate for Man United there, because that could have changed the entire game, but it is what it is. But yeah, you know, still, they didn't perform very well. Maguire, bless him, he's so good when he comes off the bench and gets like a last minute header for them, but he really, really struggled in this game. Like, delayed reactions, just didn't track back, and just was at the result of a couple of the goals there. So that's unfortunate. But yeah, unfortunately for Man United, quite a big loss. And obviously there's a lot of talks around Amorim now. There was a graphic on, was it last night, about, this is Tuesday now, last night, there was a graphic on Amorim and the last six permanent managers for Man United, and how many points they've managed to accumulate over their first 33 games. And Amorim is so at the bottom. Like, if you look at the graphic, if you've seen it, it's quite astounding. So I do wonder how long Amorim is going to be in charge. I personally think he should have gone quite a long time ago, but I understand that, like, Man United have had so many managers now, and you just want to have someone stable and that can do the job, and it must be such a difficult job. I feel bad for the guy, but he's struggling, and he kept changing formation throughout the game, and I can't imagine that's very helpful for the players as well, because they have to keep figuring out what they're doing. So I don't know. Let me know, Man United fans, what do you think? Do you want Amorim to stay, or are you ready for a new change? You'll have to let me know. Anyway, I've spent way too long talking about that one game. And then moving on to Chelsea versus Brighton, that was 1-3. That was quite a surprising one, but unfortunately for Chelsea, another red card. Chalobah kind of got slightly screwed over by Santos, to be honest, but yeah, ended up getting a red card, so that kind of meant that there wasn't a lot of service going to JP. He was pretty invisible again in this game. Enzo did get a goal though. He's playing in the 10, and he does look to be quite a nice option in FPL now. I did talk about him a couple of weeks ago, and I still like the thought of him. Considering him on the wild card, I'm still not entirely sure, but he looks quite good there, so we definitely need to keep an eye out on that. And then I think obviously the red card changed the game, and well, Brighton ended up doing really, really well. Welbeck getting a brace, which was a surprise, and Minte looking really, really good again. Very, very advanced, and this guy's 5.9 million, I think, by the way, so he could be a really nice cheap option moving forward, and they've got Wolves away next, so decent option potentially, and a Decoy goal as well. So yeah, Chelsea got slaughtered here, and that wasn't good for my Sanchez pick in FPL. I was glad he started, to be fair. I was a bit worried that he wouldn't, but I don't think Johansson did all that well in midweek, so yeah, that was that. Moving on to Crystal Palace versus Liverpool. Crystal Palace is so good, man. Glasner's been doing such a good job. It was such a good game to watch. We saw that Sarr and then Nketiah towards the end got a goal. It's nice to see Sarr back getting a goal straight away. And again, he could be quite a nice pick on wildcard. And I think based on how Crystal Palace have played, I definitely want some Crystal Palace players in my wildcard team when it comes to it. I think that they're really important now, especially even the defense. Like defensively, they were so good. Mateta, 3 big chances that he missed there, so he could be a really nice option moving forward as well. I just need to start converting them. We saw that Gay got another assist. He's been great. Bit more expensive now though. That's the thing. So perhaps I'd still pivot to more of a Richards maybe. But if you have a little bit of money, Gay is a very, very nice option. In terms of Liverpool, I mean, Gakpo got benched, which really surprised me actually. I was not expecting that. Isak and Salah had 2 big chances that they missed. Isak's getting more minutes, and well, Ekitike wasn't there, so he had to play more minutes. But it's nice to see him being able to play that many minutes. And maybe in the future he could become an option, but at the moment, other than Salah, I'd be a bit nervous picking Liverpool players. But to be honest, if it wasn't for Alisson, Liverpool would have been absolutely battered. Crystal Palace were all over him, and then it was just Chiesa, like, towards the end got a goal, but to wipe out their clean sheet, but yeah. I was very, very impressed with Crystal Palace. What do you guys think in terms of Crystal Palace assets? Are you looking to own any soon? And if so, which assets would you think of owning? You have to let me know. Then moving on to the Leeds versus Bournemouth game, ended up being a draw, 2-2. Rodon got a goal, which surprised me. I'm sure a lot of people probably had him on their bench, which is pretty unfortunate. Longstaff did well here, a goal and an assist and DEFCON points. We absolutely hauled. We see that Calvert-Lewin's at Leeds now and continues to miss big chances. Not much has changed there. I probably wouldn't touch him in FPL personally. I can see why people would want to because he's very cheap. And Leeds has some okay fixtures coming up. But for me personally, I don't think I'd go there. He's so frustrating, and he always has been, bless him. But yeah. In terms of Bournemouth, Semenyo getting a goal again continues to be an insane option. He's obviously gone up a lot in price, and I'm glad I own him. I've gained a little bit of value from him, which is good. The one that hurts my feelings is Senesi again. Obviously conceded twice, so I thought, okay, he perhaps won't batter me too much this week. I mean, his EO wasn't crazy high anyway, but got the DEFCON, which didn't surprise me. 6 out of 6 weeks he's got DEFCON, continues to be a DEFCON monster, but then gets an assist. So, I think it was a 7-pointer overall, so pretty nice return. Spoiler alert, I might have him already. But see, I'm quite glad too because, he continues to be a really good option. Even in the difficult fixtures, I'd probably be really happy to play him. And then a Krupa Jr. goal, that's quite funny for a lot of people who might have had him as their cheap forward on their bench. Probably no longer with all the wildcarders, but yeah, that happened. So, pretty good result for Leeds, attacking a bit more in this game. They haven't really scored too many goals, but over the last couple of weeks, they seem to be getting a bit more advanced and they're attacking more. So, it'll be interesting. I know that there's quite a few people that have Statch now, so we'll have to see whether the Leeds assets become options soon or not. And then, of course, the Man City versus Burnley game, 5-1 in the end. Poor Esteve scored 2 own goals, so gifted 2 goals to Man City there, but City did dominate. Doku had a really good game, loads of crosses. He was just really, really good. was really impressed with him, and in the past he's been quite frustrating to watch, so you know, I like the look of him in this game. But yeah, with Haaland, we saw that he had an assist and there wasn't much else that was really going on. Missed quite a few chances. And then last minute, got a brace out of nowhere. And like, the shock I felt, I've already talked about it, but yeah, it was insane as a triple captainer. Felt great. But in terms of losing the clean sheet, of course, Anthony scored again. He's been playing very, very well. I mean, he is overperforming in his data, but his data's still quite good. So he is an interesting option, especially for Wildcard 8 where he has Leeds at home, I think. So he is tempting me a little bit, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, that's the first few. And no clean sheets here, by the way, let me just point out. There was only one, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So moving on to Forest versus Sunderland. This was the only game across the entire game week where there was a clean sheet. And it was Sunderland. I don't think anyone would have predicted that, to be fair. But Alderete getting a 17-pointer, my goodness, getting a goal, getting DEFCON, and obviously keeping the clean sheet as well. So we even outscored Haaland. I mean, if anyone actually did start him, fair play. I know there were quite a few people that had him on their bench on their wild cards, which is unfortunate, but you wouldn't have predicted him to have done that well in this game. Xhaka got an assist, continues to look really, really good, and he's another cheap option that I'm considering. But yeah, Forest actually had a lot of shots, 22. Wood had 6 altogether, missed a huge chance, but just couldn't convert any of them. Overall, though, it was just a lot of shots, but they just couldn't get the result, I suppose. Sunderland did really, really well defensively. The goalkeeper absolutely smashed it. He absolutely saved them there, so fair play to him. I've seen a couple of people ask about whether he could be a good option. I personally can't remember how much he is, whether he's 4.5 or what. I don't think he'd be like a priority for me, but if you want something a little bit different, Sunderland have looked quite good defensively, and I don't think they're as easy of a fixture as we once thought they were, so I'd definitely consider it. And Anderson, classic, got DEFCON again, but yeah, other than that, not much to report, but yeah. Fair play. Not a good start for Postecoglou there. And then moving on to Spurs versus Wolves, another draw, 1-1. Porro got benched, and people did call it, including people like James from Planet FPL, and I didn't hear about that. I mean, I did worry about it. I think I mentioned it in my previous video. I did worry about it, but it did happen, and that was a shame. It's not like my other defender did that well anyway, so it's what it is. But yes, that happened, but Spurs, they weren't crazy. I mean, I think Wolves did quite well. Personally, I think with the back line of Santiago and I don't know how to say this guy's name. Someone needs to educate me here. Is it like Krejci, maybe? I don't know how to say it, I'm really sorry. But them as a pairing looked quite good and quite effective, and I think defensively they looked a lot better. But they did concede. Palhinha got a goal quite close to the end there, snatched a point off Wolves there, which is very unfortunate for Wolves. I think, I do feel quite bad for them, even as a Villa fan. Kudus looked really, really good again. Didn't get a result, but one big chance, hit the crossbar. And I think compared to Xavi Simons, I thought that Xavi Simons might be a really good option, but Kudus looks to be the better option. And for less money, if you have Kudus, then I'm pretty jealous, I'm not gonna lie, especially for the Leeds game. Strand Larsen played a lot of minutes, I think it's around 84 minutes, but didn't really get a lot of service. Attack looked quite weak. So that's a shame for him. It's obviously, losing Cunha was a massive loss, and yeah, we're not seeing much from them really attacking wise. Obviously Santiago Bueno got the goal, but yeah, there's a lot that needs improving there. So I think for me, for Strand Larsen to be an option again, I need to see some improvement in that regard. As tempting as he has been, but it's nice to see that he is getting the minutes now. Moving on to Villa versus Fulham. Start off with, in the 3rd minute, Jimenez scored, and obviously as a Villa fan I saw that and I was like, yeah, another defeat it is, but we clawed it back and we ended up winning the game quite comfortably, which was very nice to see. And we saw that Watkins finally got a goal. He kind of dinked it over the goalkeeper. It was not an easy finish at all, but he got it. And I'm just happy for him because I don't know whether you guys seen how stressed that man's been looking recently. He's obviously not really been performing, and to see him get a goal, I'm just really happy to see that. And obviously as an owner as well, I kept the faith and he did something, so that was really positive. McGinn got a goal as well. He continues to be doing quite well. But when Buendia came on, that had such an impact. He had a goal pretty much straight away, got an assist as well. So yeah, Elliott didn't really play all that well. I was a little bit disappointed, but Buendia did very, very well in this game. Mings unfortunately got injured and had to come off, but to be honest, they looked a bit better when Pau Torres came on, so don't know how I feel about that, but they did look a bit better, to be fair. So yeah, I mean, obviously for my Anderson clean sheet, that wasn't fantastic, but he ended up getting DEFCON anyway, so the 3 points, I'll take it, especially when I had a sea of ones in there. It felt like an absolute haul to me. But yeah, that was that. Very pleased with the result, and I'm glad that Villa got 3 points. Moving on to Newcastle versus Arsenal. So to begin with, this game was looking great from an FPL perspective for me anyway. Newcastle were looking really good actually. Pope was playing super well. And yeah, they just looked quite good defensively. Voltemada ended up wiping out the clean sheet. Which was very nice for me as someone that doesn't own any Arsenal defender, let alone 2. So that felt good. And then Marino ended up getting a goal, and then last minute was the Gabriel header from a corner. Should have been expecting it, but yeah, it was painful. I've already talked about it, but it was a painful one anyway. 13 points for in the end because he got DEFCON as well. Saliba was benched as well, which I didn't put in here, but Saliba was benched, which was surprising, but he did come on because Mosquera didn't look great, he looked quite shaky. Looked a bit better after that. In terms of the attack, just generally, Saka looked pretty quiet, not much going on with him. Gyökeres had quite a few shots, and there was a pen. They nearly received a pen. It could have been Gyökeres that could have taken that, so it could have been very different for Gyökeres owners. Obviously, as a non-owner, I was relieved that he didn't get anything, but yeah, a little bit wasteful. So I'm still not crazy convinced by Gyökeres yet, but they do have West Ham at home next, so having no Arsenal attackers, I am feeling a little bit anxious, especially with Gyökeres anyway. So yeah. Oh, and unfortunately Livramento got injured. It looked like a pretty bad one as well. Probably like I'm not sure what type of injury it was. I don't think it was an ACL, maybe perhaps like a medial lateral collateral ligament or so, I don't know. But yeah, that looked pretty unfortunate, so that's a shame for him. And then finally, another draw, Everton versus West Ham. 1-1, and obviously with Nuno coming in for West Ham, we were quite interested to see what would happen, and I was fairly impressed actually. Obviously Keane ended up getting a goal in DEFCON, whereas Tarkowski unfortunately didn't hit DEFCON for the first time, got a yellow card, and ended up on a 1-pointer. So again, as a non-wildcarder and non-owner, I was quite relieved, but I did feel a little bit bad for Tarkowski owners, including Ross. He wasn't very happy about that one. And Dewsbury Hall got his 5th yellow, albeit quite an unfair one once again, pretty soft yellow. So he's suspended for Game Week 7. So if you're an owner, unfortunately, he won't be playing in Game Week 7. But yeah, in terms of West Ham itself, Bowen got the goal, created quite a lot of XG, 1.19 XG. But in terms of up front, the options are pretty dire. Fulkrug sold him finally. It took me a long time to get there, but I did. But he just didn't look very good again. I think some people, said, why didn't Wilson come on a bit earlier? It could have changed the game. But anyway, that was that. I mean, I think Fulkrug looked a little bit better personally. I thought that he looked a little bit better. I don't know what you guys think, but I still don't think he's quite good enough. So yeah. Those are the game weeks. Those are the games from Game Week 6. I feel like I waffled on for a bit too long there, so I'm sorry about that. But it was a very, very interesting game week overall. Only 1 clean sheet across the entirety of the games there. And yeah, I'm excited to see what Game Week 7 will bring. So what we'll do now is discuss some dilemmas that you guys have had and want me to discuss with you. So this is my Pickles pointer section where I discuss some of the dilemmas that you guys have had going into Game Week 7. So one of the big topics being, of course, do we wildcard now or do we wait until Game Week 8? And I suppose I'm a little bit biased because I'm going my own way with this. But I understand why quite a few people are deciding to wildcard now. Well, obviously, our team value is absolutely declining, and there's the likes of Arsenal assets which preferably I would love to load up on. But for me personally, I just think this is right before an international break, and I know again, losing money, but I feel like personally it might be worth holding out until game week 8, because I feel like we have learnt a little bit already, and anything can happen over an international break, and I just worry that if I wildcarded now and then like quite a few injuries happen, or there was a big injury that just changed my whole, I guess strategy around things, then I would have been kicking myself for just not holding on a little bit longer. So personally, I think just because there's an international break in between these game weeks, I would personally wait until game week 8. But if you are really concerned about team value and you are stressed about Arsenal assets, fair enough, go for it. But me personally, I would suggest waiting, because you can gain a lot of info over an international break. And I suppose if you are wildcarding now, you've just got to hope that no major injuries happen at this point. At least you're carrying over the free transfers anyway. But yeah, that would be my advice. I would say hold out a little bit longer if you can. But I wouldn't blame you if you don't. I know a lot of people have already activated it, so fair enough. And then I guess this is sort of related to wildcarding, really. There's a lot of cheap midfielders that we need to discuss. Talked about a couple of them already. The likes of Anthony, Xhaka, Stach, Caicedo, Reinders, Minte, Paulinho. I think for me, the two that are standing out are Anthony and Xhaka. Minte is, tickling my pickle a little bit, I'm not going to lie as well. But those two, yeah, Anthony and Xhaka, I'm quite intrigued by, because Xhaka looks to be a very good signing for Sunderland. He's getting DEFCON, has had a couple of assists. He could be a really nice cheap asset to have if you feel fairly comfortable benching him, but also pretty happy starting him if you needed to. And then Anthony as well, especially for wildcarding in 8. He has Leeds at home, which is a very nice fixture to start off with, and he could look quite nice on a bench boost. So he's one that I'm really, intrigued by. Stach, I'm a little less keen on. I don't know whether that's controversial or not. I'm just not overly convinced yet. And I'll talk a little bit about that later as well. I just worry that he's a little bit of a trap, so I need some people to kind of convince me. But for now, I'm probably not going to go there. Caicedo is an interesting one, very good for DEFCON. But I think with I know that Enzo is more expensive, but with the likes of Enzo becoming quite a nice option, I think I'd rather just pivot there instead. So him I'm less keen on. Then Reinders, he's been a little bit frustrating. He obviously got a 9-pointer when I benched him. But I don't know. I just think on wildcard I might potentially let him go. So I think out of all these, he wouldn't be my top priority. But then equally, you're getting a cheap Man City player who is getting good minutes. So difficult one, but he wouldn't be on the top of my list. And then Paulinho, I haven't really thought about him too much, but I think he could be a nice option. However, the fixtures aren't quite so nice. So those are a few that you can think of. If you are considering cheap midfielders, who are you going for? Are you going for one? Are you going for two? Especially if you're considering a really expensive front line, you'll have to let me know which ones you're thinking. I'd love to hear why as well. And if you have any kind of Stach propaganda, then let me know, because I'd like to be convinced, but part of me is not too sure right now. Moving on to Arsenal. So are they essential in Game Week 7? I never like to say that players are essential, but I think that owning them in this game would be very, very nice indeed. And I'm personally not going to, and I will be pooing myself. So I think that says a lot about how I feel about it. In terms of which assets to own here, I'd definitely prioritise the defence. So if you really want to go for a Raya, I wouldn't mind it. If you've got the money for Gabriel, I would absolutely do it. If you want to take a punt on Timber, because he's been insanely good, I would definitely consider that as well. In terms of attackers, obviously West Ham at home is a very, very good fixture, but also with Nuno coming in now, you know, he obviously, I keep saying obviously, sorry, but he does prioritise defensive playing and, you know, going on the counter. So I think we are going to see an improvement in West Ham's defence, which may make it a little bit harder for Arsenal to break them down. But Gyökeres, Saka, good options if you can. I guess with the midfielders that are available that a lot of people might have though, like I probably wouldn't sell Fernandes right now, despite what happened last game week. Um, Player that I would be tempted by if I had a free transfer now is Eze. He'd be one that I'd love to punt on. But yeah, I think overall, I don't think they're essential, but I think it'd be nice to have at least one of them, and I'm going to be scared. I'm going to be very, very scared in Game Week 7. And in terms of prioritising, I would prioritise the defence, particularly Gabriel. He'd be the number one player that I'd go for. I would probably say in order, Gabriel, Gyökeres, and Saka, maybe, just because I don't really like goalkeeper transfers that much. I don't feel like they're that high upside. In terms of captaincy, I'm not going to lie, if you have Haaland, I would just pick Haaland. Brentford away, pretty good fixture. He's on fire at the moment. And I get it. Some people are very tempted by Fernandes. Sunderland at home. But I'm not sure whether... You know what? It's fine. It'd probably be my second choice out of all of them. But like I mentioned earlier, Sunderland are not as... It's not as easy of a fixture as we probably thought it would be. And Man United are struggling. But I wouldn't put people off. If you're really fancying Fernandes and you have that gut feeling, please go for it. But I think Haaland's going to be the number one for me. Some other options that people might be considering, if you've still got Salah, it wouldn't be my favourite captaincy, but it's Salah at the end of the day. So I would go there. And perhaps Saka as well. But other than that, I feel like the captaincy options aren't quite so broad this week. Although I have just said quite a few options with good fixtures, but... For me personally, I think Haaland's the way to go. Let me know if you have any spicy captaincy shouts. I mean, you could, if you really felt spicy, you could maybe go for a Watkins, although I'd be terrified doing that, to be fair. Or maybe even a Gyökeres as well, but equally there, I'd be a little bit afraid of that. But yeah, those are the options that I'd maybe consider, but I think in order I'd go Haaland, Fernandes and Saka. I think they'd be my top 3 captaincy choices. And then a question that I got quite a lot was, do I sell Sanchez or Sells for a -4? And I do somewhat get this because Sanchez has Liverpool at home and Sells has Newcastle away, so they both have pretty poor fixtures, and I presume that people want to get the likes of Araya in there, but for a hit, no. I'm not feeling that. I have Sanchez myself, and I just think it doesn't... The goalkeepers just... The transfers itself, they never feel very high upside in the first place, let alone for a -4. I think, honestly, just hold out and hope that they can get some saves and not concede too many goals for you. I think... I get it. Briar could get some save points mainly, but he's more of a 2 or 6 pointer kind of guy in my opinion. So I wouldn't be expecting too much. And I just think for a hit, I just don't think it's worth it. So let me know what you think about that. Do you think you would take a hit for that kind of move, like Sanchez or Celso or Raya? Let me know. For me personally, I don't think I would do that. But yeah, now let's talk about some players that I'd probably punt on in Game Week 7. So moving on to some players that I'd consider punting on in Game Week 7. The first one I want to talk about is Granit Xhaka. And I know I've already talked about him a couple of times in this video already, but 5 mil, I just think that he could be such good value, especially if you're on a wild card right now. I'd definitely have him in your wild card and potentially even start him here. He's got 3 assists already this season, he's getting DEFCON, he's on set pieces, and we know that Man United aren't very good against set pieces. With Man United, you know, next, I think that he could return in this game and do very, very well, and he'd probably accumulate DEFCON as well. So yeah, I just really fancy him for this game week. So I feel like a lot of people are probably going to have him first on their bench. But if you have the room to start him, or you fancy a punt in your team and you're not wildcarding, I'd definitely consider Xhaka here. The next one is a little bit more risky, but for West Ham, I do quite fancy Eze for this game. It is more of a risk because Arsenal are playing midweek and I guess his minutes are a little bit more questionable. Someone who should be a little bit safer if you don't fancy an Eze is potentially Declan Rice. I guess it's a little bit of narrative bias and stuff, but he did used to play for West Ham. He's on set pieces, corners especially, and West Ham aren't great against them. Nuno could impact that, I suppose, but if you're fancying an Arsenal attacker that's a little bit different, I quite like Eze or Rice for this game. So those are there. I just think Eze is such a baller, and he's been getting decent minutes, to be fair. They're not quite as set in stone, but he played in the 10 in the last game, so that's quite promising in my opinion. And then the last one, again, I've mentioned him a couple of times this video, but young Kuba Minte. Got Wolves away next, and I know that I mentioned that Wolves offensively look a little bit better, but I still really fancy him for this game week. At 5.9 mil, he could be a really nice cheap option as well, like I mentioned earlier. If you look at his heat maps, he's been so advanced, and he's just been playing so well. So if you're fancying another punt there and you're not fancying Xhaka quite so much, I think Minte could get an attack and return in this game too. So those are the ones that I'd fancy punting on if you're fancying something a little bit different. If you've managed to make it this far, then thank you so much. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do. I'd really appreciate the support. So now moving on to some players that I wouldn't really fancy bringing in right now. I know that I was just talking about how good Doku has been, but I still would probably avoid him for now. I just worry about minutes, and you know, we know what Pep can be like, and I just think he's not nailed, and I just think that there are other options that are probably better to go for, whether it be Gvardiol, Haaland, even Reinders or Foden. I just don't think, even though Doku is in good form, I just don't think he's worth the risk in my opinion. I'd rather get a little bit more info first and see what the patterns are like. I just still wouldn't risk it quite right now. So that's why I've said no to Doku. Let me know what you think. Is that crazy to say, or do you think that's fair? And then Thiago, probably controversial after his brace, but not got a great fixture next, obviously. Man City at home, so I don't think people want to bring him in right now anyway. I know he's a cheap forward, but I just feel like, I just don't know. He's not going to play Man United every week to start off with, but I just don't know whether he's going to keep it up, and I just feel like his goals have probably been used up already, and that's really bad to say. I just don't think right now is the time to buy him. I think there are other options that you can go for. I think a lot of people are going quite spenny in the forward line right now. I've seen a few people opting for some cheaper options, but the cheaper options are not really screaming out at me right now. So personally right now, I'm not too convinced, and I need to see a little bit more first to be convinced by Thiago. And then finally, again, this might be controversial, and I already kind of alluded to this, but I'm not overly convinced by stats yet. Got Tottenham at home, which isn't a crazy bad fixture, but it's not great. And I know he's a cheap midfielder that a lot of people, including the likes of Ben Crellin, have bought, but I just think that there are better options out there to go for. So again, if you guys can convince me why he is a better option than the likes of potentially Anthony or even Xhaka or even Minte, then please let me know. But I think he's not my favourite by any means, so maybe that's a little bit biased from me, but I just don't think right now I'd be going for Statch on your wildcard personally. I get it maybe if you're bench boosting an 8 though, so I'll say that. If you're bench boosting an 8, I can kind of see it, but those are the players for now that I'm not too convinced by, and I need a little bit more convincing first before I even consider bringing them in. But now let's talk about my predictions for Game Week 7. So guys, this is my final section where I talk about my predictions for Game Week 7. So these are the 3 that I'm going for this week. Sorry Man United fans, but my first prediction is that Sunderland are going to score first at Old Trafford. That's not to say that you're going to lose, guys, but I think Sunderland will score first. I know that you guys kind of struggle a little bit once you've conceded first, but yeah. For Man United fans, I'm sure you don't want that to be true, but that's what I'm feeling at the moment. Second one, maybe a little bit biased because I'm going to still have him, unfortunately. Maybe not unfortunately, though. But I'm predicting that he is going to get a goal against Burnley finally. We know that Rodgers has been very poor this season. And he got that assist last game week, but like, realistically his hand touched it, and they've had to give it as an assist because it was a goal, even though it probably shouldn't have been one. But yeah, I'm just feeling hopeful that he will get something soon. Would love to see it. It's probably not going to happen, but I feel it. So that's that one. And then the final one, a little bit more boring, I guess. But it makes sense. I'm predicting that Milenkovic will get DEFCON points against Newcastle. They're obviously going to have to defend quite a bit. Newcastle have been quite good attacking wise. And, well, we'll see with Postecoglou. He is more attacking. But I think that Milenkovic will rack up those DEFCON there, although he hasn't been great for that as of yet. But those are the predictions, so let me know what you think of those, and if you have any of your own predictions, then please let me know. I'd love to hear them. So there you have it, guys. That's the end of my Game Week 7 Pickles preview video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be uploading on Thursday discussing my team selection and the kind of plans that I have for the upcoming game weeks. So stay tuned for that. But again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys very, very soon. Goodbye.